This is Coda Radio, episode 233 for November 28th, 2016. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week, yes, you guessed it, it's our host, who's established on the East Coast, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Mr. Fisher.
Hello, sir. Hello. You know, we're gathered here today on a day where I forgot to grab my morning coffee. I don't have any Sam Adams, which would be the traditional Coda Radio beer.
It would be. It's official sponsor.
It is. I don't have a tea. I don't even have a cup of tea, Mr. Dominic. So I'm going into this without any of my vices today. So you got to be gentle on me because I'm a mess. Well, I'm a mess. I'm just a mess.
You are a mess.
Yeah.
I came prepared because, you know, I am the better host.
Yeah, of course. You came prepared. Obviously, you were taking this seriously. I have no excuse. There's no excuse.
So today's official drink spotter is Cuddy Scotch Whiskey, the Prohibition Edition.
Wait a minute. What makes it a Prohibition Edition?
It's just a different blend.
It's like the recipe they used that got people killed during the Prohibition. Like, hey, remember that dangerous one we made in the bathtubs? That's
supposedly it's the same blend as from the 20s. It's like $10 more a bottle.
The Raging 20s, you mean? The Raging 20s.
The Raging 20s.
The Raging 2016s are here, and we have our first sales numbers on the Amazon Echo. I thought this is interesting. In just a moment, I'll tell you why. But a new report from Consumer Intelligence Research Partners is estimating that the retail giant, a.k.a. Amazon, that's what you say when you're writing. Instead of saying Amazon, you say things like retail giant, has sold 5.1 million of the smart speakers in the U.S. since it debuted 2 years ago. Now, these are not numbers from Amazon. These are numbers from Consumer Intelligence report that they are research partners that they're pairing up with other people who are looking at numbers and coming to an average number they all agree on. They're pretty confident in these numbers, though. They say only 2 million were sold in the first 9 months of 2016, or as many as, depending on how you want to look at that. So that is the Echo, 5 million in 2 years. But your host here on the Coda Radio program, Mr. Michael Dominic, just tweeted that he just picked himself up a Google Home for testing purposes. So we have a new competitor entering the marketplace. So why the Google Home for you, Mr. Dominic, over the obvious successful Amazon Echo?
Well, I really want to see what the Google AI is doing, and how effective that could be in basically just like in life. I use Google for. You go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, where it could be really handy is if you're in the whole Android ecosystem and you've got. Here's my ideal scenario with Google Home, and I don't have one. I don't plan on getting one, but I'd like to test this. I need to get toothbrush and toothpaste. Because the old ones are just whatever, like or milk or whatever it is, and I think of it while I'm at home, and then when I'm at the grocery store, I can never remember if I could say, okay, Googs, add to my grocery shopping list toothpaste, and then next time I'm at the grocery store, I bring up the grocery shopping list on my Android Wear Watch or on my Pixel or whatever this Google Fantasy ecosystem is, and I have it all right there. Just small little things like that. I can see a value in being able to yell at my house and getting something on a list like that. But are you looking for something more than to-do and timers? Are you looking for actual, like, what kind of bot capabilities are behind this? Are you looking at it more like behind-the-scenes kind of stuff?
Okay, so there's a couple things, right? There's short-term and long-term. And there's also the fact that it was on sale for Black Friday. So
cool.
Throw that out there. One, I use the Google ecosystem for like my music, all that kind of crap. I'm a Google Play subscriber. Even though my personal phone is an iPhone 7, I do all my photos in Google. And in fact, my work phone is a Nexus 5X.
Animal.
I am, thank you. I am literally wearing a first gen Moto 360 right now. So I'm pretty jacked in. The only problem in the short term I think I'm going to have is all my work stuff is on my Google for, my Google for Business or Google for Work, whatever they're calling it now. and all my like music subscriptions are on my personal Gmail.
Yeah. Yep.
And I know the Google Home just can't handle that, which is really dumb. Really dumb.
I feel like that's been, this weird split between Google Apps for business and personal has been a penalty that you pay if you have a personal account and a business account now for the entire existence of the product. And it's kind of a bummer that in 2016 this is still an issue, because exactly where I would be right now is that.
Yeah.
And what it really does is it pushes you to put more and more stuff on your personal account, which is not a good business practice.
Well, my phone recognizes that there's two separate accounts, but I'm the same person.
Right.
So one of the things I really like about the Nexus 5X and the Google Assistant is if it knows I'm, this is sales season for me. So I'm driving around, I'm doing some dev, I'm doing whatever, but I'm doing a lot of traveling and traffic sucks. I like the preemptive warnings, right, with the Google cards. I think that Google's AI is going to, if there is one winner, I'm relatively confident it'll be them. We've talked about this maybe 4 or 5 episodes back. I don't think Siri is going in a direction fast enough to really compete, blow for blow, so to speak. Microsoft, it does have some interesting stuff with the bot framework and Cortana, but again, they're just not right. They're not embedded in the hardware like Google is with the Google, with the Android phones, and now the Pixel phone, which I don't have, but certainly, Google Assistant's on every Android phone as long as it's a Google branded.
If we believe that what we're told, that data is the key to successful AI, and being able to look at like all of this machine learning capabilities that Google's been building out for years, they seem to be. While the Echo is ahead in the marketplace, Google's, I think, inarguably ahead in this particular space. And how that actually gets manifested and used, I think, still remains to be seen. I think people are more critical of Siri than is perhaps fair. When it comes down to what you actually need a personal assistant to do, and I think Google often misses the mark in a lot of little ways that add up after a few months of just thousands of cuts. So the question will really be, can they over time evolve a product like this? Because in theory, I would think, unless something has to change with like networking standards or microphones, they should be able to iterate the intelligence and capability of this thing server side for many years, and this thing should just sit on your desk and get smarter and smarter over time.
I would think so. I mean, just taking it up 10,000 feet, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the possible creepiness factor here. One test I'd like to run is get in an argument with my wife and then see if I log into Gmail and it recommends, 1-800-Flowers, right? Ads for jewelry, things like that.
Yeah, I've been hoping that as people get their hands on this, people start throwing network sniffers at it and put it on the hub and watch all of the data that comes in and out of this thing. Yeah,
see, I'm like, it's not going in my living room, right? It's going in my home office or my actual office, and probably my home office, because I
feel like I could use this so much more at home, helping me organize family events and reminders and setting timers for dinner and all those
right, or just travel, right? You're getting dressed, you have an appointment. One of the things that I love on my my Moto 360 is I'll get a thing that says, there's an accident on Route 18, go on the Parkway. Stuff like that just helps, right? This just actually helps.
Now, if you want just that, have you noticed with your iPhone 7 that Siri does that now? Like, it may not do it for you, depending on your setup, but if you have a vehicle with Bluetooth, when your engine starts and your phone connects to the car's in-car Bluetooth system, Siri's smart enough to recognize, that's an automobile, and you're in your truck, and you're in your truck at 7:30 a.m. You're probably going to the office, so it sends a local push notification to my lock screen saying you have a 47-minute drive to work right now, or something like that, due to light traffic.
So the car I primarily drive is a 2008 Toyota Corolla that does not have that feature. My wife's car is a last year Chevy Trax. It does have Bluetooth tie-in, but I've never seen that happen. Ever.
Yeah, so I think Android's been doing it for much longer, but I think starting with iOS 8, 9, or 10.
Apple like CarPlay?
Nope.
or whatever.
It just has to be a Bluetooth device that Apple knows is an audio manufacturer's, car device. And then Siri, it's part of Siri Suggest and all of that, but it actually sends a push notification. I would presume it'd probably send it to the watch if you had a watch. I don't have the Apple Watch anymore.
Yeah, I don't have the Apple Watch. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I hope to get it. I'm going to run some tests, and we'll see how it goes. The reviews are okay to possibly good.
Do you have do you have a way to test like any of like the Chromecast functionality and that kind of stuff? Because
no, I don't have a Chromecast.
That seems the whole ecosystem functionality there where imagine for a moment if you were a Jupiter Broadcasting, if you could make apps for this thing and you could make a Jupiter Broadcasting app for this Google Home, and by default it would just listen. So you would say, okay, Googs, play the latest episode of Coded Radio, and it would just use the built-in speaker and play the latest episode. But then wouldn't it be incredible if you could then also say something like, okay, Googs, cast that to my TV instead. And then it pulls down the YouTube video version and use the built-in Google Cast capabilities to send it to your television.
Well, I mean, that seems like exactly where we're going.
I would love that. I would love to be able to switch between mediums like that too, use its audio capabilities, and then switch to video, and maybe even switch back depending on what my work, because the podcasts that I listen to that have video versions, I usually switch between depending on what I'm doing. It'd be great to have some sort of switching around like that. There's so many capabilities. I don't have faith that Google's going to nail all of them, but if they could open this thing up to developers, see, I feel like right now the Echo's got them beat in this regard.
Well, and that is my one qualm about buying the Google Home is it's really not open to developers at all, right?
It's open like Google Plus is.
Oh,
I mean, they've partnered with Nest and Philips, and then that.
It's very Apple of them actually how they're handling the whole developer program. They're like, you need to be our friend, and we'll let you on, and you need to sign this NDA.
So what's kind of funny too is really the only tie between Google Assistant and the Google Home is I don't have one, but from the reviews that I've read, it appears that if this then that is really like the bridge between the Google Assistant, which is like the premier feature of the Pixel, and the Google Home, which is like one of their premier AI assistant devices. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that the assistant, like if you have a Google Home, like your assistant it would be associated with your Google account. So then you would think Google Assistant would easily become aware that you now have a Google Home and how to communicate with it because all of that information is probably in your Google account. It's bizarre to me that those two things are not connected. It's like they're being created by two separate companies.
Yeah, I have a sense that, again, these are just, first-gen product growing pains.
Yeah, I bet. And like I said, they could continue to iterate up in the cloud, and it should be fine. Yeah. Look-wise, too, it looks really good, so I'm really curious because, honestly, there is room in my life for some of the Google services, and now that I don't have an Android device as my daily driver, I do miss some of that convenience. In fact, every now and then I open up the Google app on my iPhone, and I'm like, oh yeah, look at all this stuff it's telling me about in these cards that I don't even pay attention to anymore because I don't open the Google app very often on iOS. Anyways, it's an interesting device.
It's an interesting device, and I'm with the shipping, I'm probably not going to have it for next week's show, but we should move
on. Before we go off before we go off the Google ecosystem completely, I just contributed a little bit to the Google ecosystem myself. I just want to give a quick plug for a new video project. It's like a quasi behind the scenes of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. It starts with a road trip down to meet BSD to go figure out how the BSD guys live, and it turned into a much bigger project. And I just posted the first of 2 videos on my YouTube channel, which I'll have a link in the show notes if you guys want to check that out. YouTube.com/Chris Fisher. It's just my name.
Hey, hang on. You voluntarily went to visit BSD guys?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Are you okay?
Well, let's say, I'm not kidding, within about 8 minutes that I pulled up in the parking lot, they were in my home, and it went crazy after that. In fact, I think that might be, I posted both part 1 and 2. That might be in part 2. I can't remember.
Did you mention containers to them just to piss them off? I mean, it's always
don't get them started. Don't get them started on the container.
We've had that for 15 years.
They don't like that.
They don't like that one bit.
The room went silent when the FreeNAS guys said very quickly, they were going over the new features of FreeNAS 10, and they said, and Docker containers, come on guys, people want Docker containers, and they just moved on right to the next feature, and that was it.
They want to throw your ass right into jail.
Before we go too much further, do you want to talk about the post over on Medium, or no, it was actually freecodecamp.com.
Yep.
And it looks like it's about ethics in coding. And this always is kind of an interesting debate.
So I really didn't actually, but people kept sending it to me.
Okay.
So
Share with me.
This guy is a developer. He works for a pharmaceutical company that makes some sort of, I guess it's basically like a birth control medication of some kind. And the details don't really matter, but the point is they wrote this little marketing web app that was super unethical because basically as long as you had money, the end result was, oh yeah, our product's great for you. Go ahead and ask your doctor, or go ahead and, order it. Fine. And there's a larger conversation about like ethics and coding and the fact that we're an unlicensed industry. If you are a developer, licensing is maybe not something that you should want. I don't think it's a good idea for us to become like architects or physical engineers or anything like that. But we can even let's just go away from that for a second. Every single profession in the world has unethical people in it. There are unethical baristas who will short you on your coffee or overcharge you. There are unethical lawyers. There are no ethical lawyers.
Yeah, so in here, it's kind of interesting. So so people are researching for like symptoms and whatnot on the web, and they come across a website that looks like a general information website. It's not necessarily branded in any particular way. It doesn't disclose it's being paid for by the creator of a drug. It has a quiz. Yep. In this case, it's targeted at women. The women take the quiz, and the quiz basically always recommends the pharmaceutical
product.
Yeah. And so in internal testing, they were looking at it, and they had one of their clients' project manager going over it, giving a quick test. And she writes back and she says, this quiz doesn't work. And then the guy that's developing it writes back. Because at the time, remember, he's all in. I mean, he's ashamed of it now, but at the time, he's all in. He writes back and he says, well, what's broken? He says, well, it seems no matter what I do, the quiz recommends the client's drug as the best possible treatment. The only exception is if I say I'm allergic or if I say I'm already taking the drug. And then he writes back, yes, that's exactly what the requirements say to do. Everything leads to the client's drug. And then she writes back, oh, okay, cool. And that was it. That was the only discussion about it.
Yep.
Woo, that is. And he's like, I still feel bad about it. And nothing we were doing was illegal either. And make good money.
Yeah, I mean, that's some we could get into a conversation here about super shady in-app purchases in kids' games, right? Where, they try to psychologically manipulate children into buying a bunch of crap. Or frankly, adults too. Smurf berries, right? Simpsons donuts. I mean, Candy Crush. We just say Candy Crush.
Candy Crush.
All these, okay, things can get dirty, things can get shady.
There was a discussion around when the FBI was pushing Apple for a backdoor into the iPhone that they didn't even need. There was a very sort of background discussion, really. It didn't really bust forward much, but there's a background discussion saying, well, would developers at Apple even be willing to do this? Would there be some developers that would find it unethical to create a backdoor that could be used against millions of devices?
Which, again, the FBI doesn't actually need, but it's a whole different problem. Yeah, I mean, okay, so if you find things unethical, don't do them. We don't, I won't work on pornography sites. Porn is not illegal in the United States. I just won't do it because I don't think that's a great thing for me to be doing, right? But some people will. Many of my competitors do, and they may not advertise that, but it pays, half the revenue. Mm-hmm. That's fine. No judgment. Hey, it's legal. As long, I would probably think twice about doing a job for a cannabis shop. Doesn't mean the fact that Chris is the biggest stoner in Washington State. It doesn't bother me at all.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm so stoned right now. I'm so stoned.
You see how I got there, though, right? You see, I made it work.
I would. I tell you what. If anything, that's a business opportunity that I should have been getting out of this podcast industry, and I should have gotten to the IT support for the cannabis industry. That's probably money right now.
Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, the amount of data that's just flying through
that's where
these guys.
You and I differ. I absolutely, when something like that comes along, as long as nobody's getting hurt, I absolutely would capitalize on that. You think I'm joking, but I actually did consider launching a podcast about it, just because I could go down and interview people that were doing all of the work very easily. It's all right here. It's accessible. It's legal. And I thought, maybe I'll just launch another off-network show that is just its own standalone thing, that is just me going down there and doing interviews with people, because simply there is a market advantage to having an industry that is going from illegal to legal right around me. And it's like, God, that's a hard business. I see a business opportunity there. And I saw a business opportunity in maybe helping them establish podcasts and equipping them. I thought about going that route. I thought about helping set up websites and helping them get engaged in social media. Like, there's all these different avenues. I considered making money, but I'm too busy making podcasts.
And to be fair, there are degrees, right? Like, I got to be honest with you. I could probably be turned on the whole pot thing. Because you know what? Cigarettes are worse.
Beer. And remember, don't forget our official Budweiser sponsorship here on the show. We do have
I would not, but...
Yeah, that's right. Hey, everybody, go get yourself a Budweiser. Wait, what? They're not paying?
Now, no one pays for sponsorships.
I thought. Oh, sorry. I just got a note from the back office here. Budweiser is not a sponsor. It says Budweiser is not a sponsor. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. We don't need their kind. So again, this is not like. I guess my problem here is, to me, the solution is don't do things you think are unethical, right? There is absolutely no way that licensing would one, protect from this case, because pharmaceutical companies could totally find ways around that and make it legal for the software developers to do it.
You just do it outside the U.S.
Right, just do it in emerging markets. Let's be honest. That's where a lot of the money is for a lot of people anyway.
Just make it a website.
Right, host it somewhere else.
Yeah,
right?
that's not
Good old Ireland. I mean, I'm just use a DigitalOcean droplet, host it in Singapore.
Hey, speaking of that, DigitalOcean.com. Use our promo code CoderDigital. This is our first sponsor this week. DigitalOcean.com. You can go create a droplet. Now, what is a droplet? That is a really simple, straightforward machine that you control that can run Linux. It can run BSD. You can get it running in less than 55 seconds, and pricing plans start at only $5 a month. For 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. But check this out. They also offer hourly pricing. Now, remember, when you use our promo code CoderDigital, you get the $10 credit. You apply that to your account. You go create the account, log in, apply it. Now you got $10 you can use at DigitalOcean. Well, for 3 cents an hour, you can run a machine with 2 gigs of RAM, a 2-core processor, 40 gigabyte SSD, because they're all SSDs, and 3 terabytes of transfer. And then if you just want to be baller for a little while, like take a screenshot of your rig and be like, hey, r/Unix porn, this is my machine. It's just, my daily driver. And you could have 224 gigabytes of RAM, a 32-core processor, 500 gigabyte SSD, and 10 terabyte. What's that? Oh, people use that for high compute work. Oh, with the blocks? Yeah. Oh, I got another note here from the back office. It says also that you can use DigitalOcean's crazy great block storage, which you can attach, just like a little bit of itty here, all the way up to 16 terabytes, and it's all of that SSD highly available and replicated all around their data centers. Geez, that's a great idea. When they have data... Oh, yeah, look at this. Another note from the back office. They have data centers in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Germany, even in India. And I'll tell you what, if you just want to get close to Alan Jude, Toronto's where it's at. But then they bring it all together with that beautiful, beautiful DigitalOcean interface. It's designed well. It's extremely powerful, very functional. If you're a beginner or a very experienced user, you're going to love it. They got an API to match and an HTML5 console, so you can watch your droplet from post all the way up to login. Lightning fast network with 40 gigabit connections up to the hypervisors, highly available storage, team accounts, and all SSDs. And I think it's really slick that you can do monthly pricing or you can do hourly pricing. That makes it simple to experiment and then roll it right into production. And then you use the management capabilities of their web interface for snapshots and backups and templates, and you are cooking with gas. DigitalOcean.com. Use our promo code CoderDigital. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program.
Boom.
So we had an email in here about continuous integration. Do you want to jump into this? I could read it real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, let's get off my deeply questionable moral system.
Yes, all right, fine. So this came in from... How come you don't put their name in here? What's up? What's going on with this? What's up? Hold on, I'm looking. Nope, no name. Although one of the coolest, craziest, longest, whale tail signatures ever in ASCII. So there's that. So whoever Mr. Whale Tail is, thank you. So
he named himself JB Listener. That's why.
Okay, so continuous integration and deployment has saved our bacon by making our contractors a lot more productive. All the infrastructure in place, they just jump in and enjoy those benefits. All the test infrastructure is provided to them out of the box. Now you're a contractor. It's absurd for a contractor to install its own expensive continuous integration and deployment. That's crazy. The overhead and cost is prohibitive. The business that hires you should have one who evaluates. The business that hires you should be the one who evaluates whether or not they should be implementing continuous integration and continuous deployment. It doesn't make sense to set up all this overhead just for a 90-day project. Now, I admit our contractors are contributing to a multi-year enterprise product, not a 90-day project of a one-off app. He says he's got a couple of helpful litmus test questions too. Does shipping every 2 weeks net new sales? Are you in organizations with 20-plus engineers developing a single product? And is product guaranteed going to live for at least more than 3 months? So there you go. That is JB Listener Whale Tails. Look at that cool whale tail right there. I'm assuming it's either that or it's Maui's hook.
I believe it's a hammer.
Okay. Oh, you're right. It's not Thor's hammer, but it is a
Just
hammer.
a hammer. Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about the client being the one to supply the?
I completely actually agree with that. That makes more sense because it's part of the infrastructure.
What client is going to be sitting there saying, "Well, let me set up this entire continuous integration and deployment infrastructure, and then not have a full-time IT staff that could already use it"? I mean, what? What?
Well, I mean, do we want to get even more cynical on this?
Sure, I love cynical. I mean, like I said, I don't have the coffee, I don't have my tea, I don't even have a Sam Adams.
You have cynicism then. Here we go. It seems that some of this continuous integration, continuous deployment stuff, in cases where it's not super appropriate, is just another thing that like vendors use to ding each other with, right? To try to kind of snake a contract.
Feels like it.
Feels like almost exactly like it, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Remember when unit testing was first I know it was a thing in the 70s. Please don't email. But when it kind of came back in Rails, one of those things, oh, well, they didn't write unit tests. No, we didn't. That's bad. You should give us the work. Like it feels like another one of those kind of situations where, it's being used as a kind of bludgeon against other vendors, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. Unless the product or service is going to be long lasting, right? Because it is a pretty significant upfront investment. And, of all the people who kind of tweeted at me and emailed and all that kind of stuff, no one could answer the question of, okay, what's the ROI? Like, give me a rate of return. No one had an answer to that.
I wonder if in a world of droplets and virtualization and containers, if it's getting more realistic for a small client base to have, a client that's 20, 30 employees. I just don't know. Even I'm trying to make it justifiable. Even at that scale, I just don't see it likely that they would have an infrastructure ready for you. And so I think it's a little unreasonable for them to be making that request.
Okay, so you think the actual request, unless it's a long-lived web service or something like that, is actually just totally off base?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it may be I don't know why the expectation is there, and so that maybe
it's there because of content marketing.
That's what it seems like. It seems a little unreasonable. It seems a little over the top. It feels like to me too that if they were sold something else that they could get excited about, you could likely sell them on that. Right. I mean, like if they're being swayed by those things. Maybe the solution really is a real sales technique to sell them on a. Again, I come back to I think you should productize a bit of what you do and sell those particular features as products, and then because you can be bundling those things, they might be. This goes back to our conversation last week about the Disneyland thing. One of the ways you could give things away for free is by productizing and giving fancy names to the different things you do, and then just conclude them as part of a bundle. And so part of it could be your testing system. You could give it a great name. And just say, well, we solve that by using this, and have a spiel that you go into about it. It's not even lying. It's helping the client actualize the individual slices of work you actually take on for the different things.
It's I don't want to go back into the topic, but I did have a follow-on conversation offline with a few people about it. It definitely feels like fancy names make things seem valuable. I really hate to say that. But.
That's why every time Apple introduces something now, they put a new chip in it and give it the A1, the S1, the M1. Right. Nobody knows. I mean, it's a little ARM chip running some little mini iOS or something like that, right? It's the same thing all the time. The touch bar, I forget what they call it, the T1 or whatever. I mean, they productize it.
Well, the W1 in the headphones, I think, is what you're actually thinking of.
Yeah, I'm just saying, they even when they do these things, like it's not a pressure touch, it's 3D touch, it's force touch, right? It's not just pressure sensitive or a capacitive touch. They give it like fancy names.
Well, I think the complexity here too is that continuous delivery, continuous integration is really valuable in some cases.
Uh-huh.
And to be clear, it also means different things to different people. I'm talking about full test coverage, the whole kit and caboodle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess I really just don't think that like AT&T's or Verizon's or Comcast development needs, enterprises of that scale, I really don't think that applies to local small business. I just don't. Mm-hmm. Or to your startup. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's probably more of a question of once you hit a certain scale, it does matter. But really, like I said last week, your startup is unlikely to survive 2 years, right? You need to get traction, and making that investment is probably not worth it. Because look at Twitter. Twitter went down all the time, and it's still not making money. But that's a different problem. I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it or exaggerating the upfront cost. But you're absolutely right, Chris. Unless continuous integration, continuous deployment, or none, if the client doesn't have on-site IT, they still need you to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point other than making your job slightly easier?
Well, I don't think you're overreacting, because if your time is valuable, and if that's, like for me, like there's so many things I hear where people are saying, well, I don't understand why you don't just do X, Chris. It's very simple. You'd have it done in an hour. And to me, that time is, I have so little free time. That time is so valuable, and I always have something else to be doing. There's never a moment where I can say, all right, I'm going to build this thing out, or I'm going to go fix this particular issue. And a lot of stuff just lingers and never gets fixed because of that. And it's not that I don't want to do it. It's not that it's not easy. It's just simply my time is just sort of a mess. And so it is extremely hard for me to sometimes get my S together enough to get something done. And it doesn't really matter how quick or simple it is. And so the problem is I have a lot of things I need to do that I could do very quickly, but there's this core set of work, and this is what I can do, and I know I can deliver on this. And I just don't really have the time to do this part yet. And they're asking for something from me that I don't really have the time to build out, and I don't really feel like the amount of money they're paying me makes it worth it. Because that's the other equation of it is, it's probably a completely different story if all of a sudden a lot more money's on the table. But when you're working with less money than you'd like to begin with, maybe you're not getting paid quite as much as you'd like to begin with, all these little things seem very expensive.
Well, there is a whole conversation here about, like, is it a fixed bid contract or is it a time and materials contract, right? Because it really doesn't make sense to do it on a fixed bid unless that bid is very, very large. Because someone in the chat room was saying, well, continuous integration makes it easier to transfer vendors, which is generally something you don't want, right?
It depends if you want to get rid of the client, maybe, but yeah.
Well, if you want to get rid of the client, sure. But I tend to be fairly helpful if someone wants to go to a different vendor, but there are definitely limits on my helpfulness, right? And I know most other vendors just don't pick up the phone. If, hey, we got this contract, I know you guys were working on it. Thanks, bye, jerk, click. Mm-hmm. No one really wants to be helpful to their competition. I sometimes it makes sense, and I tend to be helpful only because I have the opinion that as long as it's another little guy, okay. But, let's make a crazy case. Certainly if Thoughtbot poached one of my contracts, they'd pick up the phone and I'd say, go F yourself, and hang up the phone, right? Because really, what are you doing, Thoughtbot? What is wrong with you? Sorry. Ooh, getting a little... heat.
It's all right. I like the heat. I like the heat.
Yeah. That has never happened with Thoughtbot. I like Thoughtbot. They're nice.
Oh, so... good feedback on the continuous integration question. And it's kind of funny how it feels like it could, to me, I think there's a lot of ways to look at it. To me, it does sort of feel like it, at the end of the day, is a sales problem. If you could sell them on something else, you probably wouldn't have this problem.
Well, I think it's just to hit it again really quick. Some people need it, but those people are relatively few and far between, considering like doing mobile apps, right? And it is just something that people feel like they need, almost like, gold cables from Best Buy. You don't need them. In fact, that's a bad analogy because you are being ripped off with the gold cables. Like,
man, freaking Best Buy and the price of cables.
Do they still do that? Do they still try to sell you gold-plated cables?
No, they've actually gotten, because they got such a bad rep, they've gotten a little bit better about it, but just recently I went over to Best Buy to grab some Ethernet cables and then had to go over to Lowe's to get some soldering stuff. And walking through Lowe's, I saw Ethernet. I saw the same Ethernet cable for like $8 cheaper. So
I still shop at Radio Shack because I basically feel bad for them.
Aw, Radio Shack, that's adorable.
You know what? They have the cable every time.
That should be their slogan. You know what, Radio Shack? That's a free one. I want you to email coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com. We'll work something out. Mike's the idea guy here, and he's giving that one to you for free. All right.
I love you, Radio Shack. All right, let's move on.
So you wanted to do a state of hybrid in sort of late 2016. So why don't we clear room, and I'll mention Linux Academy, and then we'll just run the floor with it. So let's stop right now. Everybody, I don't care what you're doing. If you're driving, make sure you pull over or just stop in the middle. Wait, what? Huh? Jupiter Broadcasting does not recommend you stop driving on the freeway or... Okay. All right. Everybody else, if you're sitting at your desk or whatever else you're doing, go to linuxacademy.com/coders. Go there to support the show, and then you can sign up for a 7-day free trial of Linux Academy. Linux Academy is an awesome platform to learn more, not just about Linux, not just like the nitty-gritty stuff, because they got great courseware on that, but all the big high-level stuff you can make lots of money on, too.
Whether you're an experienced sysadmin or new to the world of Linux, Azure, and AWS, OpenStack, and DevOps, a sharp skill set is an absolute necessity to succeed. Meet Linux Academy, an online Linux and cloud training platform that uses self-paced video courses and hands-on labs to give you real-world experience for a wide range of skills. Train for your certification, learn the latest DevOps tools, and grow your skill set to do better work. Linux Academy is not just a video library. Our scenario-based server labs and quiz system allow you to learn hands-on. We also have full-time human instructors who answer questions and help you earn that certification or promotion at work. We add new training every week so you'll always be up to date on the latest tech. Sysadmins of every experience level use Linux Academy to stay on the bleeding edge of the Linux ecosystem.
linuxacademy.com/coders. You know, they just added a new feature this past week that I think is super, super cool. And it's nice because when you're going through and sort of planning what you're going to learn at Linux Academy, kind of figuring out how you want to schedule, because they have a nice course scheduler and all of that. They've added a quick bookmarks feature where you could sort of it's like your watch queue for Netflix in a sense. I think that's super nice. They also have a community that's full of Jupiter Broadcasting members. And like that video mentioned, too, they have instructor mentoring, full-time human instructors. Linux Academy has been killing it. They're gaining tons of recognition. They have public profiles now you can share with your employer or clients to see, so they can see the work that you've accomplished and the courses you've taken. And if you're looking for certification training, they have courses created specifically to prepare you for the exams. linuxacademy.com/coders. I'm really kind of excited to see this hybrid update because it's an interesting topic that we've been following now sort of organically for quite a while. So what's the state of hybrid in Q4 of 2016, Mr. Dominic?
Yeah, there was a brief debate unleashed over here at Buccaneer HQ about hybrid versus native development again. And it was almost like a blast from the past because we've had these arguments.
Yes, no kidding. It seems like it comes up over and over.
Well, it came up because we hit a roadblock. But I don't want to mention what the roadblock is just yet. I kind of want to go down the list. The way I see it, there are 4 main hybrid players right now. Titanium, which I will admit I do not know a ton about. It's a JavaScript SDK. I evaluated it years ago when I think it was actually owned by somebody else.
Okay, it's been around for years. That's good.
Yeah, it's been around a long time. A lot of people used to use it. I don't hear a lot about it now, but I do see it come up in RFP. So it sounds like there's some stuff floating around in Titanium. React Native. What can you say about React Native that you haven't said about Fidel Castro? So we'll keep moving. Xamarin. Make it Raul Castro next.
Wow. Nice. Okay.
And Ionic, which is like an incompetent but decent hybrid framework.
Ooh.
So you can tell I'm kind of reverting to my old ways here, right? Of my, I used to be a, make native great again sort of guy. I used to really be, dare we say it, a nativist?
Yeah, a native. Sure, let's go with that. I like that. Did you see the article in the subreddit about the gentleman who made a phone gap based game?
Yeah,
and
I did,
and the performance was pretty garbage for him.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I'm finding that while native has certainly gotten better than 2010, let's say when I started trying native out, it really still has some problems.
Hybrid or native? What are we talking here? Hybrid or native?
I'm sorry, hybrid. Okay. I'm so sorry. I want to talk about it through the lens of Ionic because Ionic is the one I'm deepest into.
Sure.
And it is still my native platform of choice. In fact, I've been able to deploy iOS apps using Ionic on, get ready for it, Linux.
Dun, dun, dun.
Using something called the Ionic Cloud, which you can go look at ionic.io because everybody has an IO name these days.
Yep.
But there are some problems.
On Linux specifically?
With the Ionic Cloud platform service, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
One of the problems is, so here's how it works, right? And let's take an iOS deployment. You put up your code signing keys, because God forbid you not code sign something, into the cloud. There's a nice little web GUI, walks you through how to do it. It's great. They even have instructions on how to generate the keys on Linux or Windows or whatever. Go in, generate the key, upload it, generate a provisioning profile, upload it. Send a binary. You do it all in the command line. So you do Ionic package, blah, blah, blah. Name the profile you want to use to code sign it with, and you send it up. It builds it, tells you if it worked or not.
Cool.
I'm cool with all of that. That all works until you need to do something that requires you to dig into the actual Xcode project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because if you don't have a Mac, right, or if you're trying not to use a Mac, that's very hard. And when you upload it, it appears, and I could be wrong, but in my, let's say, a couple hours of testing, it appears to only upload the because Ionic apps are basically Cordova apps. So it appears to upload only the www.directory for the application, not the generated stuff under the platform's directory. So I had a case where I wanted to do a share extension, one of those iOS things where you tap on a link and, you hold it, something comes up and says, send to, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yep, can't do it.
What do you mean?
Gotta get on a Mac and go into Xcode and add the build target. Do it in the Xcode project structure. Even though all the logic you can do in JavaScript on Ionic, you're still tethered to that. So that's pretty obnoxious. And the reason I'm highlighting that limitation is because it's not the normal limitations that people complain about with hybrid where, it's slower, the animations aren't as good. It's functionality using this deployment system, not digging into Xcode itself, is just not, as of now, possible to do, which sucks. Another disturbing trend I've noticed with all these hybrid platforms, on all of their marketing pages, they're going to great lengths to not admit that they're not native. Titanium, in fact, calls themselves native, which is just not true. I think a more appropriate definite, because they're using whatever, they say they compile down, Xamarin was famous for this, right? They compile down the C# code into the native Java code or the native bit code or whatever. In today's world, I'm almost thinking we need to update the definition of native and hybrid to say, if it is not using Xcode or Android Studio and the normal SDK tools, it is not native. Which is fine. I am not saying everything has to be native, but there are some really weird and really odd limitations of hybrid still that I think come from a strategy tax by the platform vendors. There's no reason that Apple requires you to go into Xcode and add another build target to do a share extension, other than the blessed path for iOS development is on a Mac with Xcode.
Yes. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why they haven't worked on making it like an Xcode for the iPad Pro. Doesn't that seem like that would have been a perfect time to launch Xcode for iOS with the iPad Pro? Create iOS apps on the iPad Pro. Because then you could get, then potentially you could just get an iPad Pro and a Linux workstation, and you wouldn't need Xcode on the Mac. But while they seem to be neglecting the Mac platform pretty blatantly across the entire line at this point, they are still tethered to it for their most successful and important platform. The two are still very, very, very critically linked.
Very intertwined. Yeah, I'm one of the holdouts. I really don't think that the end game here is go to the iPad Pro as your development environment. I think the Mac does have a place, and I think it's crazy. I mean, as a production environment, Mac OS is far more productive than iOS. Possibly they could do some things to the iPad Pro to change that. I am and I have been for a long time, you know that, Chris, a big believer in production quality tablet apps. In fact, I spend a lot of time writing them, though it was for Android over the last year. I don't think that makes sense. Maybe you're right. I mean, certainly the Swift Playground does work, and honestly, I gave it to my 9-year-old brother, and it's a great tool. I would not be shocked if our sons, and obviously you have a daughter as well, end up, if they're learning programming in school, if they end up learning it on something that looks like an iPad rather than a traditional desktop. But for right now, for my production needs, for where their industry is, I don't think that makes sense. And I find that's kind of an aside. Where I wanted to go with this native hybrid discussion is I find myself very conflicted. You know, I have been a pretty strong, I flip-flopped, right? Call me Mitt Romney.
That's an old reference now. That's an old man reference now.
I know, poor Mitt. Can we just have a moment of silence for saying Republican? No, I'm kidding. I somehow simultaneously believe all of my old rhetoric about how hybrid apps are just fundamentally better. God damn, this is hard. How native apps are just fundamentally better. But I do truly believe that the puck is going towards most things being hybrid, and not just hybrid, but like HTML5, web technology based. Like I don't think Xamarin is where it's at. I think Xamarin is a great crutch for people from the .NET and Microsoft space. And I have to be honest, I still think XAML's very, very good. But to me, Xamarin's kind of going to be, like the VIC 9. What is it? The old computer, the VIC something.
I think you're right. The VIC 9. Now you got me screwed up. The VIC. You're talking about the VIC. The VIC 90. I think.
VIC 90 or 900.
God dang it!
Damn it!
Now look at now. That's horrible. That's horrible. That's
horrible that we can't remember this. I mean, this is your age bracket. But.
Wow. Now you're putting it right on me. The chat room will tell us.
Whatever.
Oh, it's the VIC 20.
The VIC 20.
The VIC 20.
Right. The Sears computer.
Yeah.
It was
better.
important. It does feel. I feel better that we got that right.
Mm-hmm.
It was important and it had a place, but it's ultimately not the direction things are going in. So, what do you think? Am I crazy? Because we get a lot of email about this hybrid stuff. We get a lot of, particularly on Twitter, because the native developers are rather aggressive in their making Xcode great again. About how much
I'm maybe not the right. See, I am such a performance snob. I can't.
You did drop the Android platform.
I did. I dropped Android because it's still, even on the Nexus 6P, felt too sluggish for me in a lot of cases. I am really sensitive to performance, mostly because these devices I use more as tools, especially when I'm like parent mode or business mode, and I have no capacity for my tools to not operate efficiently. And when they are something I enjoy to tinker with, or when they are part toy, part tool, when they are something that is a learning experience for me, something that I enjoy with putting ROMs on there, and I'm experimenting with different capabilities, then I am not in a mode to be offended by performance issues, or maybe the fact that the Wi-Fi doesn't work quite right, or that the camera's purple, or that the thumbprint reader takes 3 attempts. Like all of these things, I have much higher tolerance for. But when I want to use it as a tool, and I want it to be responsive and fast, when I'm using Uber out on the street and it's cold and it's starting to rain and I want somebody to pick me up in 3 minutes, I want that Uber app to be as fast as possible. Okay. And that's just depends on the context of the use, I think.
I mean, that's obviously true, right? I mean, use the right tool for the right job. What I found really interesting when we had this debate internally, it was me and my, senior guy basically fighting in the most, wimpy sort of way possible. Mm-hmm. And I was the prophet for hybrid. And over the Thanksgiving holiday, I had a very sad realization why. It just makes my job easier to sell hybrid.
Sure. Less risk too.
Less risk. I can do it. I can do the dev work on Linux. And you know what? We've done a lot of Ionic work. We have a lot of stuff that we can template out.
And you can bang out multi-platform applications much quicker.
Right. And also we can sell it for, X thousand less.
And then there's a scale too. If you get enough clients that want to do this with you, if you get enough clients that are okay with an Ionic solution, I should say, then you build a library of code that you can start to pull on to make future projects even easier.
Well, that's what I said. We have a lot of templates, a lot of libraries.
Oh yeah, okay.
What I did though to challenge myself, because he was on about, and he's like you, he's like, I'm on my iPhone. He hates Android because he thinks it's slow and crappy. I'm on my iPhone. I want my apps to work. Things need to look good. They need to be sexy. We need animations. He's really hammering me with do you want to be Walmart or Nordstrom kind of thing. I decided to open up my iPhone 7, go down the apps, look at all the apps that I use every day. I won't say favorite, but these are the apps I generally, well, I guess they are my favorite. Right? I use them.
I'm going to do that right now too. I'll look at my running apps.
Right. We could do it together. Thumbprint.
It's fun. That's fun. All right. So definitely, I know I can tell you Overcast is in there. The Hue.
Overcast, native.
The Hue Light app, it's the old one. I think the new one might be hybrid, but the old one I think is native, and that's the one I prefer.
Tweetbot, native.
Safari, Notes.
Garbage.
Telegram? What do you think about Telegram? That's probably native.
I imagine it's native, but I don't know. Slack, not native, but one of the buggier apps on my phone.
Bedit, which is a sleep tracking thing, which is iPhone only. ETA, which is iPhone only. Automatic, this is a hybrid one.
Fantastical, native.
I don't know about Nuzzle. Hacker News, NPR One is probably a hybrid one.
It's probably
Tweetbot's definitely native.
Pocket, native-esque. There's a lot of HTML rendering.
Inbox would be hybrid, I would imagine.
Airmail, which is my email client, native.
OmniFocus, native. To Do, native.
The new Vonage app, native.
Alien Blue, native. Yeah,
Backpoint's hybrid. I have to plug myself.
I do. So I have a mix, but I would say I have more native. But I would say there is a mix. It's funny. It almost goes right down the line. I said there's some apps that I'm a little more tolerant for them being hybrid. So like for example the Google Photos app. I don't really care if that's hybrid or not, as long as it works. Same with the Google Search app and the Automatic app, which I use for tracking my driving.
So do you know what and we don't need to go down the whole list, but you know what it ended up being that was true? The apps that I bought for my own personal use
were native.
Yeah. And the apps that were my bank
right.
or, work are almost all hybrid.
Right.
And there is a big quality difference. I mean, my bank's app is terrible. I just gotta be honest. It is the laziest phone app you could possibly do.
My bank is terrible too, and it is the same exact app on Android and the same exact app on iOS, and it sucks on both of them.
It's I'm okay, guys, you opened a UI web view and you were let me load a URL. Yay! It's really bad. Slack is good, but weirdly bugs out and doesn't clear notifications and stuff, which is kind of annoying. I don't really know what to think, because on the one hand, to me, it's an article of faith. It's so obvious that, software platforms become commoditized. The general trend in software development, even if we talk about languages, right? Simplifying from, crazy ass Fortran to C, this order might be wrong, to C++ to Java. Let's just stop at Java. You were commoditizing and make it easier to do bigger projects at lower or the same budget. It's so clear to me that we should be seeing a lot more hybrid, doing a lot, frankly, better than it is. But on my iPhone, I'm not seeing that. And on my Android phone, the apps just suck.
Well, a lot of those dark matter developers that listen to our show are probably creating apps for their business using hybrid.
Oh, no, I totally think line of business apps should generally be hybrid unless you're like buying 500 tablets from like one vendor. But I'm talking about, let's do a thought experiment. In 5 years, you and I are bitching about iOS 15 and you're switching. Although, let's be honest, Chris, you'll never go back to Android.
I don't know. Probably not.
The next time the camera app crashes, you'll be there for a week. It'll crash. You'll be taking a picture of your kids.
That's right. I missed the picture of my youngest getting on the bus for her first day of kindergarten. That really did upset me. Yeah.
You'll throw that right in the sewer drain.
Ooh, I could feel like my heart rate just went up just remembering that. That was really upsetting.
But, up until about a week and a half ago, it was an absolute article of faith that in 5 years, there'll be virtually no native apps that I would be using. In fact, I didn't think I was using so many today even, except for like the really specialized people who are like really, and frankly, iPhone, like people who just love iOS and Apple people, developers. But now I'm starting to question it because there is a sacrifice in being native, right? There is you want to tie into this, into being hybrid. Oh, you want to tie into this native functionality that just came out. Well, you have to go into Xcode and you have to, add this target and do this configuration.
And it's definitely always going to be like that. I mean,
Apple is not going to make this easier.
Well, and I don't think Google has much interest in making it too much easier either. They're getting more and more locked down too.
Yeah, they should just fix scroll views. I mean, fix me a table view. Forget about all of it.
It is a big problem, and I think we're thinking about it a lot in the terms of mobile apps. I think about it in a lot, and I think there's a lot of businesses out there that want to take advantage of cheap Android tablets. They want to create a web input. They want to use a web app for the people sitting at desks inputting information. The reason why I say this is I had a real 2-year deep dive into the entire construction business for all of Washington, and because I worked at a place where any plans in Washington for any architect plans went through this one central location for imaging and documentation for the government,
right,
and then for people to bid on. And in this, I tell you, I was blown away. It changed the way I see these tablets in the business. And for them, these devices with 8-9 hours of battery, built-in LTE, and just the ability to pull up things on a web page or an app is so huge for them. Then they have people back. They have secretaries and assistants back at their office that's doing the heavier data input. And so
on a web app, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, of course. Yeah. No, I like desktop apps. I think, except for again, if you're buying a super sleek Mac app because you're a hipster, I can't imagine you not using an Electron app or some sort of just straight up web app. Which again is another thing on the side of, eventually it's all just going to be HTML and JavaScript. JavaScript is going to simulate the world.
I've been using N1, which is an Electron-based email application.
Yep. That
I've been using it for like 2-3 months now on 3 different computers, and I love it. It's making email more manageable for me. It's huge.
Is it making it great again? Oh, is it huge? Well,
it's huge. Yeah,
it's bigly.
Yeah, it's bigly affecting my email usage, and that's an Electron app, and it's not the most resource friendly. It does have a few quirks here and there, but it is a rock solid email application that I couldn't care less if it's Electron. And same with the damn Slack app I use on my desktop too. And all these are running on Linux, and I'm pretty tickled pink about it actually.
Well, the Slack app I'm literally running right now on my Raytel is Electron. How about Atom, the code editor that I would be willing to bet a number of people listening to the show use.
Sure.
And how about Visual Studio Code, which I'm willing to bet a much smaller number of people listening to the show use. Both Electron apps. I'm sorry. That was unnecessary.
So that brings us back to the VIC-20. And I think your comment about the VIC-20 being a product of its time is fair, but it was still a very useful product of its time with a very long life.
Let's just do it. Xamarin. Xamarin, tell me I'm wrong. You can be the Redmond defender here.
Oh, okay.
In my opinion, Xamarin exists to solve the problem of there is an ass ton of .NET developers out there who couldn't get into mobile.
Sure, that's definitely what it became. Yeah, I mean, originally, right, it was about mono.
What was it really though?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was absolutely.
I always felt the whole mono open source thing was very half-hearted.
Well, it was about mono, and then when that didn't take off, they pivoted to mobile.
They didn't do a whole lot with mono. I just,
Well, they did.
Well, they weren't successful. Fine.
Yeah.
They did. You're right. There was a lot of effort. People worked hard. In fact, I'm sure they did a good job. But
Xamarin does feel like it solves a problem that is ceasing to exist to a certain degree. I'm not saying that there are not tons of use cases for it still, but much like Apple doesn't feel they need to make a laptop with more than 16 gigs of RAM, there's just less and less users. I feel like there's less and less use cases where Xamarin's going to make sense, because I truly believe the company was initially started as a bit of an anti-response to Microsoft, as a bit of we're going to bring this technology to the Linux platform and use it on open source servers, and we're not going to let you steal our lamp thunder. And I feel like that was the initial thrust behind creating Mono for the Linux platform, and then creating the development tools around it. And then when they failed to gain any traction, because let's be honest, nobody wanted to use it, and then there's all kinds of licensing concerns.
No. Hang on. Let me Barack Obama you for a second.
No. Okay, go ahead.
A lot of people wanted to use it, including yours truly. But they made a promise in Xamarin Forms that they did not keep. Okay, they kept it for iOS, sort of. It just didn't work on Android.
Okay.
You had a list view with images, the fucker crashed. There was nothing you could do about it, right? The reason I think it's going to be an also-ran is every year these JavaScript engines on these platforms get faster. So you don't need that weird compile down to native. That really is the Xamarin value prop, other than, I'm a .NET developer and I would like to use the tools I know, which is not an invalid thing to be, right? If I was a .NET developer, I would be clinging to Xamarin. And you know what? I see Xamarin RFPs at least, once every other month, if not more. I probably see more than that. But I don't think in 5 years, with the exception of legacy, and people are still supporting Fortran, so I'm not knocking. I'm not saying Xamarin is like, quantitatively bad or in some way fundamentally an incorrect technology. I'm just saying it is the VIC-20. It's cool, great. I'm glad you like it, but you are not going to be the mainstream. You are not where things are going to go. Yeah, and I'm glad you cringe when we talk about Xamarin, dark matter developer.
Oh, I agree. I'm getting a little cringy. I'm getting a little puckery here about it.
So the other point that people were kind of raging about in the chat, and I know you want to go soon, so we'll just be quick.
Oh, me, yeah.
Is will JavaScript in its current form exist? Will it evolve? Or will something like TypeScript, and let's be frank, it's not going to be CoffeeScript. Will something like that, or Dart, which again, it's not going to be Dart, take over? And I do see some really significant mindshare around TypeScript and a lot of enthusiasm. I have tried it. I'm not deep enough into it because, code bases exist and they're in JavaScript, and I don't think commingling makes sense. Maybe JavaScript will evolve to be an easier to work with. In fact, it already has, right? There's modules. There's classes, although that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. There's promises, which are awesome. You should be using promises. How I guess I'm asking all you crazy people, how do you not see that JavaScript is obviously the present, the future, and we're all going to be old and crotchety and making YouTube videos about how Objective-C sucked? Yes, Uncle Bob, I did watch that video.
Maybe it's not so much they don't see it. Maybe it's they're trying their best to prevent it from happening.
How?
I'm just suggesting to you that it's not that people don't see that it's the present and the future. It's that not everybody's on board. That's all. So they're going off in their own path and doing their own thing.
I know a fellow who's very passionately against Swift, but has no choice but to write it. Do you not think that,
Yeah, okay, fair. So
momentum will drag you? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Depending on what your market motivation is, for sure. Yes, yeah, or your employer motivation. Well, in that case, you're absolutely right. Your statement is I think 100% Coda Radio approved, legit. And besides, I'm betting on my Bitcoin on React. So,
how's your Bitcoin doing these days?
Bitcoin right now, actually, post Trump has done pretty well. It's been over 700 now post election. It's at $731.60 now that I'm watching it, but. That's what rumor is.
I mean, hey, maybe Trump will make Objective-C great again. I would be very happy with that.
If Trump crashed the economy for some reason, it would probably be great for Bitcoin. So,
and horrible for everybody else.
Maybe, yeah, you might. Maybe we'll see. Right. You should just move to Canada, and I bet those Canadians up there, they need tons of stuff developed for them. So you could, hook up with Ali Jude, see if he could throw you a little business. You start a whole new career up there under Trudeau. You'd love it.
We could call it Mountie Tech.
I don't believe you.
All right. Are you ready to get out of here?
Get it out of here.
I'm good. I'm going to go snuggle up with an old Objective-C manual.
See, I think that'll be comforting. I should try to remember to bring myself in a Coda Radio traditional next week. Either coffee, tea, or Sam Adams. I'll make myself a little note in Siri. Hell, let's see if it works. Hold on a second. Hey, Siri. Set a reminder for next Monday at 9 a.m. to buy beer.
Okay, I'll remind you.
There we go. So then, when everybody else gets here at jblive.tv on Monday next week, you can enjoy a beer with us, and we'll do Coda Radio appropriately equipped. You can also find it in your local time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and you can contact us at jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. And don't forget about that subradio at codaradio.reddit.com. Find Mike and me on Twitter. Links in the show notes. See you back here next week.